Let's begin with a structural overview. Welcome to another lecture. Today we examine AJ Dybantsa, the Boston-born wing who became the first overall pick in the 2026 NBA draft, and arguably a case study in how modern basketball identifies and accelerates elite talent. I am Alexei, and today I will map the historical contours, the evidence, and the open questions. In simpler terms, I will try to keep the chalk dust off the microphones.
Hi, I'm Priyanka. I'll be, asking questions, nudging us toward clarity, and maybe keeping the professor honest when the equations start to drift.
Before we get to the complexities, let's define our topic in simple terms. Think of AJ Dybantsa as a young chess prodigy who keeps winning at harder and harder boards. First in local games around Boston, then in national tournaments like Nike's Peach Jam, then with Team USA on international stages, then leading a college offense at BYU, and finally becoming the #1 draft pick for the Washington Wizards. Each board is bigger, the pieces move faster, and yet the results stay impressively similar. In more technical terms, AJ is a modern small forward, a wing who creates shots, finishes plays, and reads the floor as a secondary playmaker. Statistically, we observe his BYU season at 25.5 points, 6.8 rebounds, and 3.7 assists per game on .510 shooting. This is the kind of usage and efficiency profile that suggests primary option potential. His path runs through AAU basketball with Expressions Elite, peak exposure at the Nike Peach Jam, where he led the 2023 event in scoring, and the USA basketball pipeline at U16, U17, and U19, culminating with U19 MVP honors. Structurally, that is the modern American talent escalator.
Can we quickly define the terms, just to anchor everyone? What is AAU, what's Peach Jam, and what does it mean that he reclassified?
Of course, AAU is the Amateur Athletic Union, which, in basketball, runs elite youth circuits. Peach Jam is the flagship tournament of Nike's EYBL, effectively the highest profile summer event for top high school players. Reclassification means changing one's expected graduation year. In AJ's case, moving to the 2025 class accelerated his college arrival to 2025-26 and aligned him with 2026 NBA draft eligibility. NEPSAC, by the way, is the New England Preparatory School Athletic Council, where his early prep competition at St. Sebastian's unfolded, and the FIBA Age Group World Cups, U16, U17, U19, are global tournaments for youth national teams. He won gold at all three levels, with U19 MVP in 2025. Now, why does this matter? It's important to understand that the NBA keeps recentering itself around wings who can score and pass in space. Teams are actively searching for scalable two-way small forwards who can be a franchise's offensive keystone. AJ's trajectory, consistently creating offense against incrementally tougher defenses, makes him an instructive model for how scouting and development pipelines function today.
And where do people misunderstand his path?
Two places. First, reclassification is not a publicity trick. It is a structured timeline choice that compresses development while sustaining exposure. Second, choosing BYU was not a detour from excellence. It reflected an intention to minimize off-court noise, immediately shoulder an offense, and, as it turned out, become the highest-ranked commit in the program's history. The on-court outcomes corroborated the logic.
So, two quick facts to ground us. First, he announced his BYU commitment on ESPN's First Take, and said he wanted less off-court attention. That is unusual. Second, his family background is Congolese and Jamaican, with his father having lived in France. That makes his story feel, very global for someone who came up in Massachusetts.
Chronologically, an early highlight is July 2023, when he led Nike Peach Jam in scoring at 25.8 points per game with Expressions Elite. It is, if you will, a stress test against the country's best peers. A later milestone is 2026, when the Washington Wizards selected him first overall. It positioned him as the franchise's centerpiece, and only their second #1 pick after John Wall in 2010. A brief personal note. As a younger man, I played far more chess than basketball. Nevertheless, I now watch Peach Jam streams at ungodly European hours. You see, the event is like a grandmaster tournament for teenagers. When AJ controlled tempo there, it felt analogous to seeing a player calculate 3 moves ahead, rare at that age and predictive. This brings us to 3 big questions we should examine today. 1. Historically, what did AJ's decision to reclassify change, and why is it significant? 2. Counterfactually, what if he had chosen a blue blood like Duke or Kentucky rather than BYU? 3. Prospectively, what kind of influence might he exert on the NBA over the next decade? Big question 1. Historically, what did reclassification accomplish for AJ? In October 2023, he moved to the 2025 class. The immediate effect was timeline compression. College in 2025-26, draft in 2026. Crucially, he was not merely rushing. We can infer he was synchronizing his peak youth momentum, Peach Jam scoring lead, USA U16 success, and by mid-2023, On3's cross-class #1 designation, with the NCAA and NBA calendars. ESPN had already labeled him the top NBA prospect in the 2026 class following his freshman year. Reclassifying aligned that projection with eligibility. Historically, reclassification among elite wings is a known optimization. It reduces the variance introduced by an additional high school season while leveraging established market signal, national team success, AAU dominance, and consensus ranking. AJ maintained performance continuity at Utah Prep. Then at BYU, he started all 35 games, averaged 25.5 points, and set the program's freshman single-game scoring mark with 43 against Utah. In simpler terms, the compressed path did not degrade performance. It seemed to preserve and even amplify it.
I'm curious about one practical thing. When someone reclassifies, what actually changes in their day-to-day development? Is it just paperwork, or does it reshape how they train and compete?
To elaborate, it changes the cadence of exposure and competition. You substitute one more prep year for a college season, with heavier minutes, stronger opponents, and professionalized scouting attention. Training becomes less about showcasing across a diffuse high school calendar and more about preparing for scheme-rich college defenses. In AJ's case, we observe his workload at 34.8 minutes per game and his dual role as scorer and secondary playmaker. That is a qualitatively different developmental environment than a final prep year would have been. Big question 2. What if AJ had chosen a blue blood program instead of BYU? The counterfactual is tempting. At a blue blood, media intensity increases, NIL opportunities likely expand, and roster competition for the ball often intensifies. The central trade-off is spotlight versus centrality. At BYU, he immediately became the hub, starting every game, posting 25.5 points per contest, and breaking a freshman record long associated with Danny Ainge. That degree of offensive primacy is not guaranteed at a blue blood, where usage may be distributed among multiple 5 stars. Brand trajectory might also diverge. A blue blood jersey amplifies national TV frequency, but the narrative he constructed, choosing fit and focus, announcing on first take to articulate precisely that rationale, was distinctive and arguably memorable. Draft position likely remains at or near the top because evaluators weigh tools, production, and consistency across environments. However, the statistical profile might be different in a more crowded offense, and the public story would emphasize traditional prestige rather than idiosyncratic intent.
So does the extra media spotlight at a blue blood actually move draft boards? Or is it more about marketing, while scouts quietly focus on the same underlying skills?
Scouts, fundamentally, grade the player, not the broadcast schedule. Visibility can accelerate consensus, but it does not replace data. AJ already produced against elite peers at Peach Jam and with USA Basketball. Then he carried a heavy college load. Those are decisive signals. The media spotlight might alter endorsement arcs, but first overall calculus tends to be driven by film, metrics, and translatability. Big question 3. What influence might AJ have on the NBA going forward? The league currently prizes wings who blend on-ball creation with off-ball efficiency. AJ's college profile, high usage, solid efficiency, and functional playmaking, suggests a trajectory toward a primary or co-primary offensive role. If that scales, he could shape the Wizards' identity as a wing-led rebuild, and more broadly, reinforce the trend of heliocentric or quasi-heliocentric wings who tilt defenses without traditional point guard archetypes. Analysts highlight 2 levers. First, incremental shooting growth from .331 beyond the arc. Second, compounding playmaking reads from his 3.7 assist baseline. If those advance while he maintains scoring gravity, we observe an engine that commands top defensive attention and elevates teammates. On defense, scaling from 0.3 blocks and 1.1 steals to consistent event creation is an area to monitor. Even marginal gains there yield outsized lineup value for a primary scorer.
What should we watch in his rookie season to know if that influence is actually happening? Like, is there 1 or 2 practical signals we can see game to game?
3 clean indicators. 1. Shot diet. The ratio of self-created looks to assisted ones. Higher quality self-creation that remains efficient is a star predictor. 2. Decision time on drives. Quicker reads to kickouts or pull-ups reduce turnovers and increase assist quality. 3. Off-ball defense. Timely digs and tags that do not compromise rebounding position. If those trend positively across his first 1,000 NBA minutes, we can infer scalable impact.
And where do we, still not know enough? What research question remains open?
We need better translation models for high-usage freshman wings entering rebuilding NBA contexts. Specifically, how usage, spacing quality, and opponent scheme density interact with efficiency during years 1 and 2. A sub-question is what proportion of his points should optimally be self-created versus assisted to maximize team offensive rating, given his playmaking growth curve. The data exists in fragments. The integrative model does not yet exist. To summarize, AJ Dybantsa is a modern small forward whose path, Boston roots, NEPSAC emergence, Peach Jam dominance, USA golds, BYU centrality, and the #1 selection by Washington, illustrates how elite wings are identified and accelerated in today's game.
We asked 3 big questions. 1. Reclassification as a historical move. It compressed his timeline while preserving performance. 2. The counterfactual college choice. Blue blood spotlight might change branding, but the core evaluation likely remains. 3. Future influence. Watch the shooting growth, decision speed, and off-ball defense for early signals.
If you want a related topic for further study, consider the predictive value of Nike Peach Jam performance on eventual NBA outcomes. It is a fertile intersection of scouting and statistics.
Thank you for listening. Take care.
This concludes our lecture for today. Until next time.